Rick Hillier, and I just want to say welcome to Shots with Soldiers. And for those who've been with us before, you know what Shots with Soldiers is. For those who have not seen this before, we pay tribute to Canada's heroes, air, land, and sea, male and female, civilian or military, by toasting them after we've talked about their heroism. And the Shots with Soldiers comes from particularly World War I, before our soldiers would go over the top in an attack from the trenches. They would often be given shots of rum to warm their belly and perhaps give them a little liquid courage. And as is always the case when there are soldiers around, some wouldn't have those shots. So some soldiers would have a lot of them, and it probably wasn't unheard of that some would go over a little extra fortified by the rum or liquor or whatever they had in that shot. And so tonight at the end of this, we're gonna toast a Canadian hero by raising our glasses with whatever liquid you want to imbibe. It does not have to be alcoholic, and toast a real Canadian hero. And I just want to tell you before I actually start talking about that hero, Private Jess Larochelle, that incredible son of Canada, I want to tell you I'm here at Old Fort Henry in Kingston. And it's a very special weekend for myself and Joyce and the team that are here, because this is the team that comprised much of the command of the NATO forces in Afghanistan, starting in 2003, assuming command in 2004. And we soldiered for pretty much a year together in the preparation and in the deployment. And we've become friends across that great time span. 20 years later, after having first met in Germany to start building our team, deploying to Afghanistan for reconnaissance, back for more training, deploying in for the mission, doing the mission, and then coming home, we all remain friends, remain in contact, even though we might not see each other for long periods of time. But when we do, after 30 minutes, it's just like we haven't been apart, isn't it? It's absolutely incredible. So we're here. And I also want to say to you that I'm in the presence of another Canadian hero. Master Warrant Officer Dale Kurtzel is here in the room with us having dinner. A combat engineer. He serving right now in one combat engineer regiment. He served in Afghanistan in 2009, 2010. He was awarded the Medal of Bravery for his incredible courage in disarming an improvised explosive device without his protective equipment, without his bomb suit on, and he volunteered and went ahead and did it, and so the troops could carry on with their missions beside that. So we are blessed to be in the presence of a hero like Dale here this evening. So tonight we're going to talk about a great son of Canada, Private Jess Larochelle, Star of Military Valour, SMB. And we're joined by a lot of people tonight, but we're especially pleased to have Jess's mom, Anna, who I had the opportunity to meet about 2 years ago when I interviewed Jess and got him to tell his story so we could record it for posterity. And we're also joined by Jess's older brother, Andrew. Hannah was a member of the Canadian Forces. Andrew was a member of the Canadian Forces. Randy, Jess's father, was a member of the Canadian Forces. I think most of Anna's sisters were members of the Canadian Forces. She'll correct me after if I'm wrong on that one. Jess comes from a family who serves our nation. No wonder he turned into such a great son of our nation and such a great hero. Before I talk any more about Jess, I want to read one quick message. This comes from Lieutenant General Omer Lavoie, who was the commanding officer of the battle group in 2006 in Afghanistan, where Jess served. And in fact, he was at the fight at Strongpoint Center on the 14th of October 2006, where Jess really stood up tall and marked himself as the hero. Omer Lavoie is one of my personal heroes, an awesome leader, an awesome Canadian. He regrets not being able to be available and be a part of this tonight. And here's what he sent in a note today. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, my sincerest regrets for not being able to participate tonight. And while I'm not with you physically or virtually, I certainly am in spirit. Days like today paralyze me with reflection. 14th October is a day marked by achievement in battle, courage, and sadly, sacrifice. I personally witnessed all three. My soldiers repelling an enemy attack, my soldiers courageously demonstrating valor in the face of the enemy, and my soldiers paying with the ultimate sacrifice. And while I will not recount the tactical actions of the fight at Strongpoint Center on this day 17 years ago, I cannot help but share my pride in my soldiers as I watched them courageously repel an attack despite the losses, dead and wounded. In particular, I'm speaking of the valor demonstrated by Jess Larochelle as he broke the back of an enemy attack with rockets and machine gun fire despite being seriously wounded. and I am forever tormented by the ultimate sacrifice paid by Sergeant Darcy Tedford and Private Blake Williamson on that day, and the suffering and sacrifice that Jesse endured for the last 17 years. So tonight, despite not being there, I will raise a toast to our fallen heroes and remember them and their families. They make me proud to be a Canadian soldier and a Royal. Pro Patria, Omer Lavoie, Lieutenant General, retired. Great words from an incredible leader and a hero of mine who was there on that day, engaged in the fight himself, personally witnessed Jesse's heroism and valor. Ladies and gentlemen, Jess Larochelle was born in Sioux Lookout, Ontario, in that military family. He joined the military and was deployed into Afghanistan as part of Bravo Section 9 Platoon, Charles Company, 1st Battalion, the Royal Canadian Regiment Battle Group, of which he was an incredible part. He was a relatively quiet young man, but he still liked the spear and still liked the good time and still liked a little ruckus once in a while. Deployed to Afghanistan, and on the 14th of October, 2006, was deployed into Strongpoint Center with his platoon, 9 Platoon of Charles Company. They moved up towards Strongpoint Center, and during the move, one of the 4 light armored vehicles carrying a section hit an improvised explosive device. Nobody was seriously hurt or killed in that explosion, thank goodness, but the vehicle was a write-off and the crew had to take it back into Kandahar airfield to get it repaired and or replaced. So they immediately were taken out of action. And now we're down to a platoon headquarters and 2 sections. They arrive at Strongpoint Center trying to grab a quick bite to eat, get the word that an attack is coming in and it's going to be a big one by the Taliban based on the interpreters and our intelligence assets, listening to the radio traffic from the Taliban itself. Master Corporal Jeremy LeBlanc, now Warrant Officer Jeremy LeBlanc, was the second in command of the section. And he said, you know, I got to put somebody in the observation post, that mud-walled tower over there. We don't have enough troops to defend the rest of the place. If I put 2 up there, we never want to put 1, but I have to do it. Do I have any volunteers? Jess stuck his hand up and said, I'll do it. He moved up into that observation post, a tower with some open windows in it, made of mud and straw, baked in the desert sand in the desert sun for hundreds and hundreds of years. And as soon as he got in position, the Taliban attack came in. Rocket propelled grenades, heavy machine gun fire, a 75mm gun firing, and one of the first rocket propelled grenades came into the observation post and detonated inside. It knocked Jess back into that mud wall, hard as steel, knocked him unconscious for just a few seconds. And then when he came to, a variety of things had happened to him. The retina in his right eye was detached. And anybody who knows about retinas and detached retinas in your eye knows that it's extremely, extremely painful. His eardrums were burst. He was concussed. He had bones broken in his neck. His back was broken, and he had shrapnel peppered around the rest of his body. And when he woke up, as he told me a couple of years ago when we chatted, and rocket propelled grenades were bursting around him, machine gun fire coming off the walls, he said, I thought it was a Star Wars movie. All I could see was lights and flashing colors, and I wasn't sure what was happening. But he got himself back up, got into the fight. He got on the machine gun. He had 800 rounds of machine gun ammunition. And with the Taliban that he could see coming up the irrigation ditches from the great growing field right in front of him, he started to bring fire to bear up on them. He fired till he got down to about 100 rounds left on that machine gun, taking out Taliban fighters one after the other, and they still kept coming, still kept engaging him. When he got down to about 100 rounds left, he decided to keep that for a last-ditch fight if they should charge his observation post. And then he started picking up and using the M72 disposable rocket launcher. There were 15 of them in the observation post. He would pick one up, extend it out, pop the sights up, pop the end caps off, aim at a specific Taliban fighter, fire it, throw away the tube, pick up another, and do exactly that time. Do exactly the same thing time and time and time again. Taliban kept coming. He went back to the machine gun, brought more fire to bear. The attack was sort of knocked out over that period of time, not only by fire from Jess, although that was a prime part of it, but by fire from the other 2 vehicles initially, and then down to just 1 vehicle left, because the other vehicle with Sergeant Darcy Tedford and Private Blake Williamson got hit by an RPG, and it was badly damaged. They were both killed. Master Corporal Jeremy LeBlanc was wounded with a belly wound, but stayed in the fight, and the vehicle couldn't shoot or couldn't fire back at the Taliban that were attacking. The attack died off primarily because of the damage and the fire that Jess had done and had brought to the fight itself and dissipated. The platoon commander, Lieutenant Ray Novak, who had just taken over the platoon 3 weeks earlier, moved up to the observation post under fire a little bit himself. And then he looked at the observation post and said, after he said that, I looked at how it was rubbled now, and I thought nobody could be alive in there. And then a little head popped up, Jess Larochelle, and said, hey, sir, I'll put some covering fire down. You come on in, I'll cover you, and you come on in. Ray went in and observed the condition and what had happened and all the blank rounds left and the empty cardboard tubes from the M72, and said to Jess, you've done your job, I'll replace you. And Jess said, no, sir, you don't want to put somebody else in this position. I know the lay of the ground. I know where they're coming. I'll stay here and fight. He got resupplied with ammo while he stayed there to carry on with the fight. And then later on that evening, before darkness, got reinforced by one other soldier. I believe it was a warrant officer, but I'm not certain of that. Got reinforced and stayed there overnight. And the next morning got replaced, pulled out of the observation post. The platoon got pulled out and went back to Kandahar Airfield. Back at Kandahar Airfield, by now the bodies of Sergeant Darcy Tepper and Private Blake Williamson were prepared for shipment back to Canada for their last trip back to our native land. And so in his last action after that fight, what Jess Larochelle did was help carry the body of his very best friend, Private Blake Williamson, onto that aircraft for the last trip home. It was only after he had done that, that Jess went to one of the medics and said, hey, I'm hurting a little bit. Well, hurting a little bit was perhaps the understatement of the century. He was assessed. Obviously, it was found that he could not continue in the fight in Afghanistan. And he started what was a very difficult and challenging return from Afghanistan to Canada, and came back and went through 17 years of great difficulty. He had post-traumatic stress disorder in the extreme from time to time and was affected dramatically by it. He suffered from his wounds. He suffered from the medication used to treat both the PTSD and the wounds itself, because sometimes those medications were conflicting, and they certainly caused much harm to his body. And at times, the medical treatment that he received in Ontario wasn't of the very highest level, and that caused him also. I had the opportunity to meet with Jess at Rideau Hall, at the home of the head of state of Canada. We hosted a ball for heroes, and Jess was there with a young girlfriend. He looked about 14 years old, and he and I had a chat out on the back lawn. And the owner of the Vancouver Canucks was there. He came up to me and said, hey, the Ottawa Senators are in the playoffs, in the finals. They're playing the Anaheim Ducks. This was in June of 2007. He said, I have tickets for the game tonight in Ottawa, the Ottawa Senators and the Anaheim Ducks in this playoff. And General Hillier, he said, I'd like to give them to you. And I said, look, I don't want those tickets. I'm not going to take those tickets. But let me just tell you, I know an individual who's going to really enjoy them. I went around and found Jess and brought him back. And I said, there's a guy here who would like to chat to you. And so Paolo Accolini, one of the owners of the Canucks, gave Jess his tickets, thanked him profusely for his service. And Jess was looking at the tickets, and Paolo moved off, and Jess looked at the tickets, and he looked back at me. He said, sir, I've never been to an NHL game. Do you think these tickets are any good? I said, you know, Jess, I think they're pretty good. I think you're going to find, that those seats are right down in the lower bowl at center ice. And of course they were. And he went and had a great time. I spoke to him after that. He was an incredible individual, an awesome Canadian, a great son to his mom and his dad, and a great brother to Andrew, a great member of his family, a great soldier, and a great hero. Jess passed away on 30th August this year, 40 years old. We lost him far, far too soon, and no doubt in my mind that we lost him because of his service to Canada and the sacrifice that he made. As many of us here know, we've been pushing Jess to have his file reconsidered by an independent review commission, and with a view to say that maybe Jess should get more than the Star of Military Valour. Maybe Canada should recognize him more appropriately with the Victoria Cross, and the first one that Canada would present would be the Jess Larochelle. Our fight is at a bit of a plateau, but we haven't given up. And we're looking for Canadians to support us in the long term, to pressure their members of parliament, to pressure the government of Canada, to pressure the Governor General, the head of state who controls the honors and awards, to pressure the Minister of National Defense. And we will work through this until we get the government of Canada to agree to an independent review committee to look and start with the file of Jess Larochelle and determine whether or not he has been appropriately recognized, or whether more appropriate would be the Victoria Cross. And once they do that, maybe to look at other Canadians throughout our history who also perhaps weren't appropriately recognized. So here's a great Canadian hero, a great son of our nation, a great son of his family. We miss him dearly. One of the things Jess liked to do was have a campfire and sit by it and talk to friends or family, maybe have a beer and just enjoy that by that campfire. So Anna and the family had asked that if people around the country should feel so inclined to light a campfire, take a picture of themselves at that campfire, send it into Valor in the Presence of the Enemy on either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and just do that as a tribute to Jess and his incredible service. So far, Bruce has received about 200 pictures of small groups or people that had fires in honor of Jess. I have not yet done it myself. I'm saving it till next summer when I go back to Newfoundland at the fire pit down on the beach. And one night I'm going to have a fire there and a drink to Private Jess Larochelle. What an incredible son of our nation. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have a drink in your hand or a glass in your hand, does not have to be alcoholic. I'd like you just to lift it with me and just to toast that Canadian hero, Private Jess Larochelle, Star of Military Valour winner, to Jess. Thank you.